Welcome to Apparition Dimension, all things considered horribly.
Yeah, and this title basically composes what we want to talk about because we'd like to talk about the things we're interested in. And we like scary things. So we like horror films. We like books about things that are dark fantasy or horror, TV shows like such as Evil or Supernatural that do the same thing, music, and even things that happen in real life. Because I know for a fact that Charles got the title for this thing because they were actual ghost hunters, which is actually interesting as well.
Yeah, so back probably 10, 15 years ago now, I and some friends started ghost hunting, and we'd go around Indiana and try to find traces of the paranormal in graveyards. The thing on the screen right now is a photo I took while we were out ghost hunting near a notorious haunted bridge. I know every town and state has their obligatory haunted bridge. Uh, this is one of them. It's a train overpass where evidently someone died during the construction, and their ghost continues to haunt it to this day.
And yeah,
Found nothing.
but that's the thing about um, the whole thing about supernatural and the horror thing is there's stories everywhere, and we could talk about them all ever. But what we're going to focus on this first season is we're going to talk about what I call the supernatural sleuth. And that's the person that does discover those things, the ghost hunters and everything. But I feel that the prima donna of everything that is considered the supernatural sleuth is the exorcist. And it's one of the oldest forms of the supernatural discovery that we have because you could go back to biblical times and there are exorcists in the Bible, and even the Jesus Christ was an exorcist because he actually brought a demon that was supposed to have 500 personalities that was named Legion, and he basically took it into a herd of swine that went over the cliff and drowned. So everything about exorcism is very old, and it's so prevalent that
So Jesus murdered a bunch of pigs.
yeah, Jesus murdered a bunch of pigs. But a current Christian artist, Neil Morris, has an album called Jesus Christ the Exorcist. So yeah, he is considered to be the first exorcist. But we're going to go across lots and lots of exorcists in our first looking at what we're doing with supernatural detectives because it's a very old practice. And if we get around to doing enough of these things, we might be able to talk to a real exorcist with the Catholic Church because that's my goal.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I have a couple connections and I'd like to bring one in because it'd be interesting to see the reality of what this is really like. Because several movies, including The Exorcism of Emily Rose and The Rite, are based on real, actual Catholic Church experiences. And even though the most famous movie, The Exorcist, is a work of fiction, there was a lot of real exorcism that was researched before he could write a book of that nature. So
do we know how much research he did, or
I'm going to do a little bit more work, but
okay, so just a couple of case
like
studies.
I said, in the early 70s, he put this book out, The Exorcist, and William Peter Blatty was a great writer, and he's done lots of books in the same genre because of the success of this book.
That is a well-loved
Yeah, it is a
edition of
well-loved
that
book. And interestingly enough, back in the early 90s, I purchased this book at a yard sale at a Presbyterian church. And I looked at this book and I got it and I knew I wanted it. And a lady next to me goes, "That's an interesting book to be at a church book sale." And she's not wrong. But I was aware of the story and I thought, as somebody who was well read and somebody who would love Stephen King, that I needed to read The Exorcist. And this story, back as a 13-year-old, scared the bejesus out of me because, yeah, a lot of stuff went down in this book.
So So how true is the book to the movie? Having never read the book myself, being the stereotypical idiot in podcast world where there's the person who knows a thing or two, and then there's the person like myself who, I'm the idiot.
Yeah.
Hi.
So, I like horror films, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the other horror films that deal with exorcism, but there are like lists of the greatest horror films that put The Exorcist in the top 5 easily. And when it came out, other than Rosemary's Baby, which is a great movie, horror films hadn't been in the forefront. I mean, you had Psycho, but only a handful of really, really good horror films had come out at this point because we didn't have the slasher films yet and all the other things that would come out.
So you're saying that the Universal classic monster films weren't good?
They were great, but this was a different level. It took things to a different level because demonic possession is something that the classic horror films weren't really willing to address.
Okay.
And you had some movies that were based on H.P. Lovecraft that talked about possession and stuff. Some they were B-level movies. So it was not until the 70s and late 60s with Rosemary's Baby that you had big movies that were going to discuss things like exorcism, because all your classic horror films didn't really get into this humanic subject.
Interesting. So I don't know what you're describing though. Like, how do you feel about like the original Dracula with Bela Lugosi and all that?
Oh, those are great movies, and
but the plot where like Dracula enthralls the Nina to do his bidding in Renfield.
I mean,
so how does that differ to you?
So
from an?
Are you looking at that as kind of a possession of some sort?
Is it? That's what I'm asking you.
It's interesting, but it's interesting if you think of a vampire as a demon, because I don't really know how the Catholic Church or whoever is an expert of those things before people were actually thinking would have looked at those things. But that's an interesting concept. But I'm going to still say that those were done, and not trying to offend you, Charles.
No, you're fine. I'm posing a question.
They were done on a little more playful level, even though they were...
Well, I think the Society of the Times made it so that they were... I don't know if it was playful. It was what boundaries could they push at that time, because people saw films and like certain things just weren't acceptable.
No. And I guess by the 70s, we had really come to a different point where we were willing to address psychological issues with humanity. And clearly, I didn't see The Exorcist until years afterwards.
So you read the book first?
I read the book first, but I had to tell you that I had friends in school that had already seen it. And I had a friend, Scott Ray, wherever you're out there, thank you, for walking me to school, describing The Exorcist and the second movie in full detail to me.
Then she threw up, and it was great, and I jerked off 3 times.
He didn't tell me about any of that stuff. He just talked about, because he was just freaked out about the whole concept. And the movie really, really does a good job of bringing William Peter Blatty's story to light. It's scary, and it is still one of the best horror films and one of the best movies about exorcism, because we'll talk about it a little bit later, because there's dozens and dozens of movies about exorcism, but this is the granddaddy of all of them because it is so good. And it's so good that there's going to be a reboot. The guy who did Halloween,
the recent Halloween, not the original.
No, not the recent Halloween, the one,
not the Rob Zombie.
The last 3, everything is going, and it's going to be out in October of this year. It's going to be a reboot, and it's been a successful run. But I noticed that with all of the good horror films, whether it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jason or anything or Halloween, everything has a reboot, and no one's touched this until now. But
Well, there have been other exorcism movies. They just haven't been
no. It's just no.
focusing on that property.
Yeah, this is going to be a reboot of the movie with the pea soup and everything else. And one thing I loved, because when I did a little research about the original Exorcist, is just to get things a little bit creepier, they filmed everything in a freezer, just so the air when they're breathing just came out a little bit more lively, just a little bit more intense. They did a good job with all of that.
So I do have a question, though. Having never read the book, what would you say are like the major differences from the book to the film version of that story?
I just feel like if you should, and I encourage you, if you're a reader, to read William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist to get just a little bit more intensity, because his book, hundreds of pages, just describes it all a little bit more intensely. Like when she comes out and talks to the astronaut in the movie and says, "You're going to die up there." It's as vivid in the book as it is in the movie.
Okay.
And those things, it's just like this is silly, but
No, go ahead.
because it was a shorter book and they didn't have to take as much out. The first Harry Potter
Okay.
is almost dead for rights to what J.K. Rowling did in her book, because it was a shorter book and they could do everything of that. William Peter Blatty's book, The Exorcist, the first one, is short enough that they can do what they need to do justice. And I don't feel like they really go apart from it
Okay.
too much.
So it's not too thick that you lose a lot in
No,
the translation.
you have everything you need to do in a basic.
We don't have Ben Dilladong's like story arc just ripped away.
No. I read the book and then I saw the movie and I was just like, it's pretty much, for the most part, spot on, the story. And generations of people have just been disgusted by the movie and terrified because it's scary, and it does a good job showing just how graphic demonic possession can be.
Okay.
Because let's talk about it.
Yeah.
A lot of people think
what
it's
we're
really
doing,
real.
right?
And the Catholic Church has been fighting it for centuries. And I remember growing up in Pennsylvania, and somebody in a nearby town was supposed to be possessed.
Really?
Yeah.
So you had a possessed neighbor?
Well, not my neighbor, but somebody came in next town. Two movies that I think really come home because they're both freaky, and I saw at least one of them in the theater. But when I saw The Exorcism of Emily Rose back in like 2009 or 10, and it came out back in 2005, so it's much older.
Okay, so I should feel older because I remembered seeing it in high school, and that tracks. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that movie messed with me because it was so graphic. It was so real.
It was very tense.
It was tense.
Like, I think tension was like the main through on that movie.
And I went back and I researched it, and it's a real story, and it's based on an actual demonic possession that happened, according to what I've researched, in the 1940s. A girl, I think her name was Anneliese, in Germany. And I encourage you to go back and look at that and see the real tracks from that, because when I looked at that, and this was back in 2010 when I saw the movie, the internet pushed me to look to a real exorcism that was going on in Mexico. It was scary.
So the Mexican. So what? Like, did you find a video? Did you find photos?
It was a video of a real exorcism.
Okay.
And you can find this stuff, and I'm not encouraging you to do this unless you're really, really good with yourself, because some of this stuff is freaky. But there are real videos online of exorcisms. And why they want to put this out for people to see, I don't know. Because
So the families and friends of the people getting exorcised are putting out the videos, or the priest?
I don't know who
what's
put
the
only ones I've seen are just like in Mexico. And I don't know
Okay.
who has the right to show this stuff. But I know enough people that tell me that this stuff is real, just because of people that I know that are very faithful and that believe in this stuff. That's scary. That's scary, that because who knows if that stuff is real. Because I want to say, what we're seeing in the movies is just a depiction of what's evil. And if evil is real, then what we're talking about is bordering along something that is very evil and is actually scary.
Because there are so many nice demons that possess you
There's
for the
nothing
good of
nice
your
about demons.
you had that job interview. Let me just possess you real quick and make sure you ace that. I will, the nice demon that possesses someone. I feel like
I mean,
I feel like that's a web series.
I just I can't go with you because there's just too much water under the bridge, my friend. Too much water under the bridge.
Happy demons. I don't know.
I feel like you've been watching too many anime shows.
I mean, only a little bit. I've kind of, I don't know. I haven't watched that much anime lately.
So, as we're talking about exorcism and the topic of exorcism, there's been less than 24 top-notch movies made about the whole subject. And like I said, 2 of them are based on real things. The other one I want to mention real quickly is The Rite, that came out in 2011 with Anthony Hopkins. And it's based on someone's real experience with Vatican training on exorcism. And it's cool because the Catholic Church has long been battling this stuff. And like, I want to talk to somebody, and we have a connection. So hopefully we can get somebody to talk to us about this stuff, because I'm curious on what is really going on.
I mean, if anyone's out there that stumbles across this recording, video, stream, braille transfer that someone will inevitably make at some point, if you want to reach out to us and you have an exorcist or paranormal story or something you would love to get on the line and talk to us about, we're here for it.
Yeah.
I don't know how many other kinds of exorcists are out there. I am not an expert. I'm the person who clicks things on his computer.
Yeah.
But
Charles,
I think I've heard of Jewish exorcists.
Yeah,
I know Catholics do it.
So I just want to be curious, are there
Americans.
secular exorcists as well? Because I don't know if there are people, and I'm going to research this for the next, because I have to believe that there are people, and maybe they're more along, because if you know a little bit about Christianity, there is Catholics and then there are non-Catholics, and we call them Protestants, but it's much more wide open to anybody who's not
I like
Catholic.
to call them sinners.
You whatever you want to do. But anyway, there has to be non-Catholic Christian exorcists that are out there too, and those would be interesting people to talk to, because I have heard something recently from somebody that I know that I love very much about some things that were going on.
How is your mom doing?
Yeah. About some things that were going on in Tennessee recently, where they were like pulling out demons out of people and stuff. And
demons afoot in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I don't know. Evil could be alive and well. And
I mean,
so if we're making movies about it, are we glorifying
the Republican
these
Party
things?
exists. Evil is alive and well.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I have a list here of like the 24 best horror films that deal with exorcism.
Fancy. Do you want to read it off?
There's 24 of them, and it goes, I mean, a lot of things like The Cleansing Hour and The Deliver Us from Evil, The Last Exorcism, The Medium, Ouija, The Ouija Board, and Ouija 2, The Origins of Evil, The Exorcist 3, which I already said, The Wailing, The Conjuring, Agnes, Requiem, The Devil Inside, The Possession, The Exorcism of God, Keepers of Darkness, The Witch, The Priests, and one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, Rosemary's Baby.
So the baby's possessed? I have never seen Rosemary's
That
Baby.
is supposed to be Satan's spawn, and that is a scary, scary movie.
But if it's Satan's spawn, then how is it a possession film? Did I break you, Andrew?
Well, I think we're supposed to understand that there was a demon involved in the procreation of that baby.
So a demon and a lady did the thing, and then the baby came out.
Have you not seen this movie?
No, that's the first thing I said. I literally said I have never seen this.
So I'm
and then I
asking
asked
you,
questions.
Charles, watch Rosemary's Baby before our next podcast.
See, look, this is an in-person podcast that we're just streaming. My hand is
Because
actually not that far off.
I have done my homework. I have seen these movies, and I know what's up. And they're scary as F. Because Mia Farrow, who, yes, was married to Woody Allen and was really, really cute in the late 60s, plays an innocent woman who's married to an actor. And Rosemary's Baby follows along a whole satanic cult in their apartment complex, which is a little bit bizarre. But maybe if it was set in San Francisco, it would be a little more believable, because back in the 60s with Anton LaVey and all that stuff with the Satanic Church.
Do you know much about the Church of Satan?
Did you know that Anton LaVey actually played Satan in the movie Rosemary's Baby?
I did not, but do you know anything about the Church of Satan?
I do.
Okay.
I know enough to know that they're more about the celebration of humanity than anything else.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you don't take a complete religious standpoint, they were celebrating humans and human development on a lot of levels.
I will argue that if more Christians just followed the 70 knocking keys, they would be better Christians.
I'm not going to argue with you, because I don't feel like you and I have anything to disagree about with these things. You and I see eye to eye.
Yeah.
Because as someone who has a faith, I believe that you have to have a thicker skin, and you have to be willing to look at what's real, and you have to know that faith is the only thing that's going to guide you. But you can't be blinded by your faith. But when it comes to the things we're talking about, some things are real and some things are fiction. And while we're going to talk about some of the things that are real, I would really like to focus a little bit on some of the fiction. And that's what this show is about. Because we'll look at books and movies, TV shows that depict these things.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
So that's what we're gonna try to do here, is to go through and, just talk about the different things and the paranormal and everything else that we're into, and like that interests us, whether it's horror films, whether it's
because
ghosts.
Yeah, we're talking about the
demons.
subject of like possession, and there's really good shows that have it too in TV. The Evil, and I love this show because it has a Catholic priest who actually is involved in exorcisms, and they showed that stuff on the show. And then, we had almost 20 seasons of Supernatural, who was dealing with demonic possession and among other things. They got a little bit too dark into the whole heaven versus hell stuff, but the show really does cover the subject very much so with demons.
See, Supernatural is a show that I tried to watch, but I just couldn't get into it.
It's clearly fiction, and it's long and tedious, but there are some really good moments in it.
So what's your favorite supernatural moment?
There was an episode where they went into a mental hospital that was full of ghosts, and they had to do some stuff to get out of it. And that's probably my favorite episode, because this could be something that we can really focus on in a later episode.
Okay.
Mental hospitals. They're just
Yeah.
scary in and of themselves. There's one
I
in
mean,
Indiana called Central State, and there's one in
I don't
Philadelphia.
know if Central State's still there.
Yeah, it is.
I thought they turned it into apartments.
They did.
So
But
it's
that
not
doesn't
still
mean
there.
that they're not haunted.
Okay.
And then there's one in Philadelphia, and I know that there are cool things. So long way into the thing, but yeah. So
we've got a lot of stuff we want to talk about. I don't know what our release schedule is going to be on this, or if we'll do it online, or we'll continue to meet in person. But yeah, this is what we kind of like to talk about.
yeah,
It's a thing. I also like cults. They're fun.
yeah.
There are people
we
getting
have a lot we can
brainwashed.
talk about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just wanted to close on something, because we're going to talk about the films, because the ones that go in the movies are the ones everybody sees. And we have a whole list of, a magazine did the top 100 films, and we're going to slowly try to talk about them, as I'm trying to get my hands on all 100 of them, and as well as the 24 exorcism movies, because our first kind of theme with this whole thing was to talk about the supernatural sleuth, the people that are actually fighting the demons or ghosts and everything. And Charles knows a little about this with his experience with ghost hunting. But
I mean, yeah, I only went out like a handful of times, just to give some background on that. I think I probably went to like 8 different graveyards. Only ever got one now lost recording that was like weird, where someone like that I was with started whistling Dixie, and then some unexplained whistle noise started to whistle with him, and it was just faint and brief and just with it. And just because it was recorded, I think, on his phone, we never got that transferred to a computer, so that's lost forever. You'll have to take my word on it. I promise it was creepy sounding.
No.
Believe me.
Yeah. And Charles, we're probably going to do maybe an episode on just experiencing your experience. But
yeah.
I want to close with a little bit looking at things. And I thought a subject we'd talk about today is some of the crazier horror films that come out recently that just kind of pushed the envelope. I know there was a Sinister movie that came out, a sequel, last year, that was so scary that it said that people were leaving vomiting. And when I was researching that, I found out that they were doing 2 horror films last year that I didn't see either of them because they were probably so bad.
Okay.
They had Winnie the Pooh as a slasher.
I still haven't seen that. I'm so upset. I really want to see that. I am so mad. By the by, everyone out there that might find this someday, Cocaine Bear.
No, we're gonna talk about Cocaine Bear in a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll wait.
Okay. So yeah, so we got the Winnie the Pooh, and then they also did a Grinch slasher film.
Like your mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't mean. He was like killing people.
Well, that's not nice. At least. I mean,
no. And the
were
only
the people
reason that
bad?
I knew about this was because when I was researching the Winnie the Pooh, they talked about the slasher film that came out with the Grinch. It was the last Grinch movie was a slasher film, and that's just bizarre.
Did Dr. Seuss prove that? Like the estate?
Dr. Seuss is dead, so is he really?
I said the estate.
Oh well, I don't think Mr. Geisel or Theodore Geisel. Yeah, I don't know how his estate. It was kind of about that, but I want to get back to something you just said, Cocaine Bear, because I like that.
Phenomenal.
This
so
movie,
much cocaine.
Yeah,
so
this
much
movie
bear.
is based
so
on
much
a true
80s.
story. It's bizarre, but
it's not exorcism related.
No, not at all.
Don't
but
care.
We're just talking about
awesome
horror that has nothing to do with our subject, because Cocaine Bear, funny as hell.
It was so good. It was such a splatterfest. It was cheesy. It hit all the right chef kiss B film, decent quality budget.
Yeah. We've come to the point where B films are just going to do just as well. In fact, let's be honest. We love this genre. B horror films are always going to do well.
They're just fun.
Yeah.
I don't care. suspend your disbelief. Just relax.
Yeah.
Let it
There's
wash
nothing
over
to
you.
suspend, Charles. This is based on a true story. It was done well.
Yes. As was The Exorcist.
Yes. Based on good fiction.
Mm-hmm. It actually happened.
Well, a lot of them do. And
Just like
growing
Fargo.
up, I should just mention that why I got interested in the subject and one of the reasons I bought this book was I was reading in my local paper and there was a girl in Erie that was actually possessed. And this is in the late 80s, early 90s. And I said something to my dad when the article said that they had to bring in an exorcist from Pittsburgh to like relieve her of her demons. This family
Really?
was religious enough to know what they needed to do, apparently.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what happened, but they brought an exorcist in from Pittsburgh to take care of whatever was going on with this girl who had a lot of issues. So all of a sudden, in my like 14-year-old mind, I'm like, uh, 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 the stuff in the movies might be real. So we're going to spend a couple episodes talking about exorcism, and we're going to decide if it's real.
Yeah. I'm fine with this. I'll check out exorcisms. I'll decide for myself whether or not they're real. I mean, are they real? Yeah. There's a person doing a ritual and someone is being claimed to be possessed by demon. That part is true. Those things happen. We've got that down, but the rest of it, I don't know if we'll find the answer, but we're gonna at least look into it a bit more, right? Is that the plan?
And we're going to watch a lot of really scary movies on the way.
Yeah. So,
Because we've got books, we got movies, and we got TV, and we've got music. And I'm going to leave this episode with some very famous music. We're going to play a little snippet of a song called Tubular Bells. You probably don't know the name of the song, but if you've ever seen The Exorcist, you're going to know this song. And we'll see you next time.
yeah,
This
and
is Charles and Andrew saying out, and good luck, and take care of yourself.